You know, I learned when I was very young. I was a chairman CEO of Sony. I was a young man then, and Sony was Apple when I was the head of the company. It was you went to at somebody's house, if they didn't have a Sony Trinitron, if you remember that probably, or if you didn't have a Sony Walkman, it was the product you picked up. And I was the chairman CEO of the company, and the technology company, not the electronics company, the software company, theaters, movies, television, music, all of that, was a gigantic global company, tens of thousands of employees. And Marita, who was the founder, said to me, you got to come, this is the first month or month and a half we took the position, global company, come to Japan, talk to all our Japanese presidents, and tell us, you know, what you're going to do and how it's going to work. So you go to Japan, and I don't know how many people you know that in Japan it's very confusing. First of all, it's a very difficult language, and the methodology of communication is very different. But it was in this giant room, not quite as large as this, but with 22 presidents of the airplane company, the electronics company, the white goods company around the table. And my CFO, I just brought my CFO for the company, and he went through all of the different businesses we were in. I mean, huge global businesses. And then he got to the movie business. We had 2 studios. And he said, we're going to make, on this studio, Columbia Pictures, we're going to make 26 pictures this year. And TriStar 26 pictures, the other big studio. These are gigantic undertakings. And we'll have 13 of them will be global hits, receiving at least a 70% return on investment, upwards of that. And then another 25% would be domestic hits. That means U.S., generally a U.S. product, doesn't travel as well, and we'll have 4 flops of the 26 pictures. So we went through the whole thing. When it was all finished, Marita said, Guber-san, why do we have to make the flops? Hello, did you hear that? Why do we have to make the flops? Hello? Like, can you just make hits? Nobody can just make hits. That was my learning. Nobody in the world.
Yeah.
In sports, think about this. In sports, the best baseball team loses 65 games a year. 65 games a year. Every team loses, wins. If you can't manage that kind of environment, you're not going to be successful. He didn't understand that you can't just make hits. So in all the businesses I learned, all of my businesses I was in, I had to look at failure as an inevitable cul-de-sac on the road to success. How do I manage the failures? How do I learn from the failures? How do they become part of my process? How do I narrate them to my executives, to the media, to my shareholders, to my employees in the company, to the global audience? And that's been really part of my success, is that I've learned what failure is, and it's inevitable. You're going to have failure. Maybe if you're in the pacemaker business, you have a lower range, but almost any other business, you're going to have failure. And so what happens is you become often risk averse. You move away from failure. But you know where success lies? It lies very close to failure. They're very close. They're handmaidens in the journey. If you can't manage failure, you're never going to know how good you are. Certainly in all the sports, all the movies, all the music, all the technology companies I've run. You have to be willing to stare failure down. You have to learn from it, but you can't be afraid of it. You have to cope with it, but you can't own it in a way that prevents you from being daring and taking charge of yourself. You can't win on the basketball court, on the football field, the baseball stadium. You can't win in technology. You can't win in any business unless you're going to face risk. You cannot be risk averse. And so that's where I learned that tone.